I don't own the rights to this song, so I gotta sing the music with my mouth. When you're out there dancing on the floor, darling, and you feel like you want some more, and I don't know the rest of the words to the song, you make me feel mighty real. You make me feel mighty real. Come on, y'all. You make me feel mighty real. Sing it now. You make me feel mighty real. That was so awkward doing that intro without music, but honey, I looked through my wigs and I had a wig similar to his. And you know I had to do an intro for Sylvester, honey. That is who we're going to talk about today. This is Ashley with Ashley Says So. Go ahead and click like, share, and subscribe to this video, and let's get to it. Sylvester James was born September 6, 1947 in the Watts district of Los Angeles, California. His mother's name was Letha James, and his father's name was Sylvester Sweet James. Now, little Sylvester was the eldest child of Big Sylvester and Letha, but he did have two brothers. One's name was Larry, and the other one's name was John Wesley. Now, Letha, Sylvester's mother, was born into a little bit of money. Her family actually owned a lot of land, a lot of farmland, so she had some money. As a matter of fact, when she and her husband first got married, they moved into a cottage that her family owned. But as it goes when you marry someone, you kind of get off of leaning on your family and you start to lean on your spouse because you guys start to build a family together. And since Letha did what she thought she was supposed to do, which is lean on her husband, Big Sylvester, when he ended up leaving her when the children were very young, she was left in desperate straits and they actually had to move into the project. Sylvester ended up having a hard time forgiving his father for leaving his mother and his brothers, and he basically called him a lowlife for the rest of his life. Now, Letha was a devout Christian, okay? She was one of the kind that leaned on the Lord for everything, and she brought her sons up the same way. And they were part of Kojic. And if you guys don't know what that is, that's Church of God in Christ. And that's actually what I was raised up in. Growing up with all this going to church, Sylvester and his brothers took right into it. They loved going to church. But over time, Letha started noticing that Sylvester loved it a little bit more than his brothers. He wanted to sing in the choir. He wanted to join any group he could that had to do with the church. He went to enjoy it and have fun. And as his brothers got a little older and they probably started to look elsewhere and didn't want to go to church so much, Sylvester was right there at the door every time it opened. Let me throw this out there. Also around this time, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that area, it is said that many already felt like he was very effeminate. He acted like a female, he sang like a female. And when a child is free and comfortable in their skin enough to be that way at an early age like that, predators start to notice. And that's what happened to little Sylvester. Allegedly, when he was 8 years old, he went to church, and I am not sure if he was with his mother or not. He could have been, but also in Kojic, they would have things like children's programs, YPWW, all kind of stuff where it would just be the children. So he could have been by himself. All I do know is that while he was there, a grown man, either somebody in the choir, it is said that it was a choir director. Some other people say it might have been a deacon, pastor. I don't know who it was, but I'm going to go with the choir director. So the male choir director started to basically talk to him, started basically grooming him, probably telling him things like, it's okay to feel the way he feels. I feel like that too. Do you want me to help you with it? Y'all know how pedophiles do. They'll talk to these children and they'll say anything that they feel like will make the child comfortable. Well, Sylvester did get comfortable. And at first it started off with touching, probably moved into kissing. After a while, it was basically full-blown intercourse. And if you think this is shocking, I got a little bit more shocking news for you. It was supposedly more than one man. There was a few men in that church that was doing this to him. Once they got word that, he's already open for these things, other men joined in. And so this child was going to church and being raped repeatedly. And so the years passed by with Sylvester not saying anything, and this made the men grow comfortable with him, like they were having intercourse with a grown person. And so, sometimes it might get a little rowdy, and that is what they were doing to this child. Well, somebody did so much that it ended up hurting him. It ended up causing damage to his bottom. And at this time, he was around 11 years old. So that just shows you how long this had been going on and why they got so comfortable with this child, where they felt like they could treat him like an adult when it came to penetration. And so Sylvester gets home and he tries to have a bowel movement, and it hurts. And he ends up telling his mother, and I don't know if she took him to the doctor straight away or if he had to have a few more episodes where finally she is like, okay, what is going on? Why are you hurting so bad? So she takes him to the doctor. The doctor finds out that somebody has been sexually assaulting this little boy. And I'm guessing the doctor asked him questions about it, and Sylvester told the doctor that, I wouldn't call it sexual assault because I wanted it too. I wanted this to happen. We were in a relationship. But he's a child, so in his mind, whether he thinks it's a relationship or not, the adults know that that's full-blown sexual assault. There is no consent when it is a child. The doctor calls the mother in, and he straight out told her, your son is gay. And supposedly when the mother asks why are you saying this, he tells her about the extensive damage that Sylvester has, and he also tells her about the conversation that he and Sylvester had. And if these stories are to be believed, Sylvester also had that same conversation with his mother when he got home. He basically let her know that this is who he is. And this is where sources start to differ, because some sources say that, Sylvester's mom, she was very close to her son. They had a very close relationship. Everything was good. She accepted her son. And then other sources say that she definitely did not accept this with her son. She was outraged, and she told him that it was a sin and that she could not accept it. She had been raised in Church of God in Christ, where they do preach that homosexuality is wrong, and she could not accept that her son was gay, and that she would not accept that he was gay. So I suppose that shut that conversation up pretty much between them right then, and Sylvester went ahead with his life. Now, I don't think he made any changes and tried to act straight or anything like that. He just was like, I'm gonna be who I'm gonna be, and whether she accepts it or not, this is who I am. So life goes on. He even ends up still attending that same church. But soon enough, people start to hear around the church that Sylvester James is gay, and they start to judge. Not the leaders, of course. Y'all already know what that is. They ain't finna judge them grown men. Them grown men is innocent, baby. They finna judge this little boy, this little bitty 11-year-old boy. That's who they finna judge. And they start judging him, and they start looking at him wrong. It does end up getting so bad that Sylvester feels the need to leave. And the same people who had passed him around and used him started also encouraging him to leave. Oh yeah, you can't be in here doing all that. If you're gonna be gay, you can't be sitting up there showing everybody you gay. You gotta be in the closet, son. You can't be out like that. So if that's the way you're gonna live, you might as well go and leave here. The truth of it is, they did not want their mess getting out and people starting to judge them and find out about their lifestyle. And also, the little boy done told now. You know what I'm saying? He's no more good. Nobody can touch him anymore. What is the need of him being around? Even though they probably did it in a sweet, concerned way, they basically had no more use for him, and so they tossed him to the side. And so Sylvester did end up leaving. He left the church all the way at the age of 13. But none of this stuff that happened discouraged Sylvester from being who he was. This is just who he was. So, he started to come into himself. His hair starts getting a little longer and a little straighter. You know what I'm saying? The wigs start trying to come, the makeup, the dresses, things start trying to come over the years. And then at the age of 15, he started hitting up gay clubs. He was becoming who he knew he was. And this would have been fine, but he was still living in the house with his mother. Now, by this time, Letha had remarried to a man named Sonny Hurd, and she also had at least 3 more children, and she still did not accept that he was gay. She knew he was going out to these clubs and living his life and dressing like this, but I do know that she didn't accept it, and not only did she not accept it, his stepfather didn't accept it. So things started to get really, really rocky in that household. But Sylvester held on, and he wanted to stay with the family. But one day he and Letha got into a terrible argument. and he ended up leaving the house permanently. Sylvester James is around 15, 16, 17 years old, and he is homeless, but not all the way homeless. He still can stay with some of his relatives, he stays with some of his friends, and mostly he stays with his grandmother. He loves his grandmother because she is accepting of him. She does not judge him. She don't tell him he needs to change. She loves to hear him sing. And those friends that he was staying with were people that he met at the gay club, people who had his same interests. He and a few more gay men got together and started a group called the Discotheques. And this was Sylvester's first venture into singing and trying to make a career. They would put on their costumes, wigs, dresses, jewelry, and they would blow up the scene, honey. You hear me? They never went anywhere without looking their best. They also had a friend in Etta James. So they would go to her house, spend the night, put on her clothes, dance the night away, and she would allow that. And then sometimes they would sneak inside of her house when she was out on tour, and Etta ain't gave them no permission to do that. Sylvester just doing too much and broke in that woman's house having parties. Now, Sylvester was one of, if not the only standout of the Discotheques. So when a fine, young, attractive man named Lonnie Prince came by and everybody giggling and, laughing, flirting with him in his face, he chose Sylvester. And while he and Lonnie bloomed as a couple, he and the Discotheques ain't bloom as nothing. They was broke, them folks ain't had no money, but they had to do stuff to get money. So some of the Discotheques prostituted. But Sylvester said he wasn't finna do that. He never wanted to stoop to that level. So he just started stealing. And of course, if you steal and shoplift everywhere you go, eventually you're gonna be arrested. And he was arrested several times. So when being arrested didn't really do it for him, he started trying to find steady work at real jobs. And if you're wondering if Sylvester had attended school during any of this, he did. And he actually graduated high school at the age of 21 years old. And honey, they said he was serving fabulousness with his senior portraits. Baby, they say he had on a blue chiffon prom dress with a beehive hairstyle. Do not play with Sylvester. And child, look at here. You know where he probably got that wig from? The Watts riots. Because they said that even though Sylvester wasn't really formally involved with the civil rights side of things when the riots started, he joined in with the looting. Not just him and all of his friends. They bust down them stores and went and stole all the dresses, wigs, lipstick, makeup. He know better. But here's the thing. Sylvester probably played around a lot at this time and had a lot of fun, but there was one thing that he was getting very serious about, and that was his singing. And when he noticed that the Discotheques were not really as serious as he was and not as passionate as he was, some of them had settled down with different men, he wanted to get away from that, so he left the group. After Sylvester left the Discotheques, he found out that he was tired of life in Los Angeles altogether. He didn't find himself really going anywhere far there, and he wanted to be completely free and in a city that could push him to his goal. So he left to go to San Francisco. And when he got to San Francisco, he quickly moved into a home with a group called the Cockettes. Now, the Cockettes were another entertainment performing group, and they were mostly made up of white males. Now, with the Cockettes, Sylvester could truly shine, honey. He really came into himself. He was beautiful, he was magnificent, he was talented. Once again, he was a standout. And this was cool. He was putting on all type of performances. But he started to see that the other Cockettes were more into doing jokes. You know what I'm saying? Everything was a parody of other things. Also, they were really heavy into drugs. Everybody's doing LSD, trying to find the key to life. When Sylvester is just trying to find out what's the next step in my career. So he ended up leaving them, child. Now, although a career was not in Sylvester's grasp, there was another lover that was in his grasp. And this was a guy by the name of Michael Lyons. He was a young white male, and Sylvester actually proposed to this guy. He loved him so much. And they got married. And of course, the marriage was not recognized as legal, but they still had a ceremony. With this marriage, Sylvester started to tone down his look. He did not dress like a female every day anymore. He went for a more androgynous look. And it was not just his marriage to Michael that started this tone down. It was because people started telling him that you would be recognized more and get more successful in the business if you would just tone down your look a little bit. record companies and people are just not taking transgenders seriously at this time. So, put on the suit. This could help you. And what do you know? Soon this change actually did help him. He was offered to record a demo album with the record company A&M. Record label A&M were so impressed by him and his singing, they also found a backing band for him. And they named this band the Hot Band. So now he was traveling as Sylvester and his Hot Band. And the music that they are releasing isn't doing so well, but they are killing it with their live shows. They are in demand. People want them to play gig after gig after gig. They even get so popular that they end up opening for David Bowie. And see, David Bowie didn't know how hot Mr. Sylvester was, honey, because David Bowie's show did not do well. He shouldn't have came on after Sylvester. Let me tell you, honey, ain't nobody worried about or cared what David Bowie was saying. They wanted more Sylvester. As a matter of fact, after it was over, David Bowie said, I shouldn't have came here. They weren't interested in me because they already had Sylvester. He was their androgynous male, and there just was no space, no room for Mr. David Bowie. Sorry, David. But it didn't matter much because they needed record sales. And they tried everything to make it work. And at one point, he even had the Pointer Sisters doing background for him just to try to make this thing work. But it just was not taking off. And it was because his voice does not go well with these rock guitars. He don't have the voice for that. He has more of a soulful, spiritual voice that you can't put over a freaking guitar. A Hot Band, they noticed this. And they felt like they were wasting their time with Sylvester. So they ended up leaving him in 1974. Sylvester is kind of in the cold again. And he does have numerous backing bands auditioning for him and playing for him. But there's not really much that's sticking. And then one day when he's holding auditions, this lady walks in there, walks on that stage and opens her mouth. She sounded better than me. But honey, she blew Sylvester away. And that turned out to be Martha Wash. Sylvester signed her on the spot. He needed her to find somebody else that was just like her. A heavyset woman that could sing. And she had just the lady in mind. Azora Rose. He found his success when he found these two ladies. And he named them the 2 Tons of Fun. Word is spreading that this Sylvester guy is really, really good. And have y'all heard his backup singers? Get them on stage now. I promise you they are going to kill it. And all of this word of mouth and touring and singing everywhere eventually paid off because there's this one club that loved them so much that they hired them to be their regular weekend entertainment. And that was the Palms Club. And now that I think about it, I'm not sure if the Palms nightclub was one of the gay clubs or not. But if it was, it's something very telling about that. Because this is the nightclub they were singing at when Motown's Harvey Fuqua heard them and wanted to talk to them about signing them. So if this was a gay club, what was Harvey Fuqua doing there? Unless he had already heard about Sylvester and the 2 Tons of Fun and he just came in that night to check them out. That would make sense. But child, the scandal, child, because you never know, baby. Y'all know what it is. Now, when Harvey sat down and talked to Sylvester, Martha, and Izora, honey, they were elated. He wanted to sign them, but the thing of it was, and that they didn't know about at the time, he was not talking about signing them to Motown like they initially thought. He wanted to sign Sylvester to a solo contract on his record label, and that record label was called Fantasy Records. Now, of course, they found out that it was Fantasy Records before they signed, but what I'm saying is I think he kind of played up the Motown connection to get them excited about signing with him. So when Sylvester signed with Fantasy Records, he probably had Motown on the brain. So you have to watch it because some people are manipulative like that. They'll throw out what you want to hear and then hit you with something else like boom, and by that time, you already excited. So you just jump head first into the mess. So he does sign with Fantasy Records in 1977, and soon after signing, Ashford and Simpson penned a minor hit for him. The song is called Over and Over. And I say the hit was minor because it was a minor hit over in the US. But baby, over in Mexico and Europe, folks was just jamming it up. And Sylvester didn't care that it hit overseas. Baby, you know what he did? Took it right in stride and took his little tail on down to Mexico City and toured and did a whole bunch of shows down there. Baby, y'all wasn't finna stop his money. And not only was nobody going to stop his money, Sylvester was starting to get a handle on the thing that he had wanted most of all. He was a celebrity now, like a semi-celebrity, and this paid off for him. He ended up being really, really good friends with Harvey Milk, who was the first openly gay man to hold a position as an elected official. Now, the year was 1978, and by this time, Donna Summer, Bee Gees, a whole lot of people had a lot of hits with disco. So somebody had the bright idea that Sylvester should tune into disco for his next album. And when he dropped his next album, he also dropped a single. And baby, the name of that single was Mighty Real. Let me tell you, baby, when this song was released, people went nothing short of insane. I mean, everywhere on the dance floor, you just folks just losing their mind out there. It basically defined the whole disco genre up until then. Like, this was it. This was the pinnacle of disco. And I know I'm talking like I was there, but from my research, this song was it. Oh, baby, y'all already know what happened next. Traveling all over the world, doing all type of TV shows. He's singing everywhere. He's in high demand. Everybody wants a piece of Sylvester. And one of the other things that made this song so big, so popular, is that people, and by people, I mean me, could not understand how this was not Aretha Franklin. And a few others could not understand how this was not a woman. How is a man singing in a tone like this? Yes, we've heard falsettos before. Yes, we've heard Eddie Kendricks and some of the other falsettos that sang with groups of the 60s, but never in such a feminine, powerful way. How do you bring soul out in a falsetto? It's amazing. And I'm finna say one more thing about Mighty Real, then I'm about to leave it alone. But baby, why come Sylvester thought he was all that in that video? Especially when he walked out with that white suit on and his hand was in his pocket. Gonna sit up there and have on that white suit and gonna do a spin after he done singing his verse. Boy, go on. Now, with the success of Mighty Real, everything was going mighty good in Sylvester's life. And also that song became a pretty much anthem for the gay community. He was so loved in San Francisco that he was awarded Key to the City by the mayor. And he also had his own day, which was March the 11th, which turns out that is the day that I'm filming this. That is ridiculous. Dang it. I wish I could have released this today, but unfortunately I gotta edit. Now, Sylvester did follow up this mega hit with other songs. I mean, they did okay, especially in the dance club, but they really did not make a splash. And the reason for this is because Sylvester's fame came at a time that was bad for disco, okay? His fame and his song blew up right when the Disco Sucks movement started. And that is why I have never really liked trends, because trends make people feel like they have to follow it. A lot of those people probably still love disco, but a freaking trend took it down. Just because all of a sudden somebody wanted to go out in the middle of a field and burn a whole bunch of disco records and say disco sucks. Everybody wanted to jump on the bandwagon with that. These trends and things like that, they just gotta stop, because they ruin a lot of good things. And disco, I don't care what nobody says, was a great thing. So, although Mighty Real is doing well, his other follow-up singles are not doing that well. He does add on another background singer though to make it 3 tons of fun, and her name was Jeannie Tracy. Although Sylvester didn't know it at the time, it was probably a good idea that he started to recruit other women for the Tons of Fun, because Harvey Fuqua had started to get into the ears of Martha Wash and Izora Rhodes, telling them, you know, y'all see what Sylvester is doing? Do y'all see that success? You girls could have that for yourselves. Let me record you. And they did. They did start moving on their own, singing on their own, recording their own records, and they didn't completely leave Sylvester in the cold. They did not. They still sang with him sometime, but if it wasn't a massive gig and if it wasn't a whole lot of pay, they were not there because they wanted their own fame. And I understand that these women initially got into it to find their own fame. So I don't blame them and I don't fault them not one bit. They want to realize their dreams just like Sylvester wanted to realize his dream. And he took it in stride, but even though he put a smile on his face in front of them, truly and really he was upset about it. And he was telling other people, you know, he felt a little bit betrayed. but those women wanted to pursue their own career. And they did. And of course, they ended up being very successful as the Weather Girls. You know, they had that hit with It's Raining Men. At this point, Sylvester was mainly left with one ton of fun, and that was Jeannie Tracy. So he was kind of looking for other backup singers, and Jeannie was like, hey, you need to come to church with me. You know, I'm Kojic, just like what you were. Come to my church, we can find somebody there. That church was called the Love Center, and the pastor of that church was Pastor Walter Hawkins, and his wife was actually Tremaine Hawkins. I had no idea they were married, and if you guys don't know who Tremaine Hawkins was, she was the woman that sang, I'm going up a yonder, going up yonder. Sylvester actually started going to that church, and this started some rumors. This made people feel like that the Love Center was actually one of the earliest churches that was kind of like a gay church. You know what I'm saying? It accepted lesbians and gays, and people could come in there and be free to be who they were, due to Sylvester and other gays being in attendance. They do find backup singers to help them out with some of their projects. It is said that Tremaine Hawkins and I believe Lynette Hawkins sang with Sylvester on a couple of projects. They say that Miss Tremaine got a little carried away with all this secular singing, honey. They said that she had a little view of the worldly things that come with it, and that is when she released her own little secular club hit, honey. And that song was called Fall Down, or Spirit of Love. And that song hit the top of the Billboard charts, child. A gospel singer. I mean, song became a huge hit in the club. Y'all know the church folks was, ooh, child, I can't believe, ooh, baby, I know she didn't do that. They went clean off on Miss Tremaine. She basically had to come begging and crawling to come back to her church audience. Then she continued singing gospel. Let's move on. By 1986, things had really slowed down for Sylvester. He didn't really have any more songs on the top of the charts. He was still recording, but he was recording his own type of music. And it didn't help that in 1980, 81, 82, somewhere around there, they arrested Sylvester for stealing special coins or something like that. But come to find out, Sylvester didn't even have anything to do with that, so they tarnished that man's name for nothing. It was another guy who had stolen his identity, and they were writing bad checks and all kind of stuff, doing it in his name. And then the second thing that happened to him is he found out that Harvey Fuqua and his fantasy label had stole upwards $220,000 from him. And the courts found out, and they were like, okay, you need to pay this back. You do owe this money. You're liable. And he's like, well, you know, I can't do it. I ain't got number $20,000, so take it or leave it. Sylvester, do you want this $20,000? But babe, I guess since he ain't had nothing else to offer, Sylvester was like, yes, I do want it. Put it in my hand and leave me alone and don't talk to me no more. So that's pretty much how that ended. Although Sylvester had a string of lovers, a lot of those relationships ended because Sylvester either felt like the men didn't pay as much attention to him or praise him in the way that he wanted to be praised, or the men found out that Sylvester is sitting up there threatening them, telling them that they better be faithful, but while he's out here traveling on the road, he's sleeping with other men. But now he is with a man named Rick Cranmer, and he really loves Rick. They have a very successful relationship. In fact, he loved this guy so much that he went on the Joan Rivers show and announced to the whole world that this was his boo. This was his guy. And Cranmer's family, they had no idea that their loved one was even gay. But Rick didn't mind it, and Sylvester didn't mind it. And they probably would have been together forever if Rick had not caught HIV, which progressed into AIDS, and he ended up passing away from the illness in 1987. After he passed away, Sylvester, of course, was very heartbroken, very sad, but he knew that he still had strength in his body, and he knew he still loved his music. He also knew that there was a big chance that he probably had HIV, but he did not want to get tested for it. Like, he just could not bring himself to go look for the disease. He was pretty much like, hey, if it comes, it comes, but I'm definitely not finna go checking to see if I got it. And eventually, the virus did just pop up in Sylvester's life. He started to have a persistent cough. He started to have shortness of breath. He developed pneumonia. And when he went to be treated, they did inform him that he not only had HIV, he had full-blown AIDS. This diagnosis, though, did not stop Sylvester's life. He wanted to continue. He wanted to live and accomplish and achieve as much as he could before he was in the ground. So he still tried to sing. He started working on a new album. Now, he did make an appearance at a gay parade. And in that parade, they were pushing him in a wheelchair, and he was so frail, y'all. I mean, it just looked like he would break almost if you touched him. He didn't have any of his hair anymore. He did get to spend Thanksgiving of 1988 with his family because they had came down to his home. Everybody wanted to celebrate with him, and his mother, she was actually living there caring for him. And then on December the 16th, 1988, Sylvester James died in his bed. He was only 41 years old. I know I didn't speak a lot on his career and everything that he went through in his career, but I'm gonna tell y'all something. If y'all ever go read about his career, you are going to see that Sylvester stood against all type of adversity. Like, he knew he was going to make it, and he would not stop fighting and would not stop pushing no matter how many times people slammed the door in his face. It's very inspirational. It inspired me, and I'm sure me saying this probably inspires some of you. Like, don't ever give up. Never give up. And guys, this has been the Old Hollywood Scandalous Tale of Mr. Sylvester James. I love you guys so much for tuning in. Go ahead, like, share, and comment. Tell me what you think, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.